When you ignore your feelings for too long, something inside of you starts to change. Your brain's reward center begins to turn off, and that sense of emotional numbness you feel becomes a kind of survival mechanism. This is your brain actively protecting you from the overwhelming emotions you aren't processing. But here's the thing, it's not helping you. In fact, it's setting you up for something much more dangerous than just feeling overwhelmed. This might sound dramatic, but it's true. Long-term emotional suppression is like slowly suffocating your emotional intelligence. We're going to break this down today. I'll show you 3 surprising truths about what really happens when you ignore your feelings for too long. One of these is going to hit harder than you think, and it's probably the one you've been avoiding. Now, hear me out. It's easy to dismiss the idea of ignoring your feelings as a bad habit or something to just get over. But here's the reality. When you tell yourself you're not allowed to feel something, you're not simply being tough or resilient. You're slowly rewiring your brain to detach from the most basic human need, emotional connection. And this, the inability to connect with your own feelings, is what leads to deeper issues. The guilt, the self-criticism, the constant push to get over it, it's not a moral failing. It's a psychological process that's been set in motion. What happens when you ignore your emotions isn't a flaw. It's a biochemical reaction that's happening in your brain. Dr. Susan David, a psychologist at Harvard Medical School, explains this process clearly in her research on emotional agility. She found that suppressing emotions leads to increased stress and anxiety over time because it prevents the brain from processing negative feelings in a healthy way. And when you push those feelings down, they don't go away. They turn into something worse. Studies show that emotional suppression activates the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for self-control. But this leaves less energy for your emotional regulation center, the amygdala. The result? You become more reactive, and over time, your ability to deal with stress diminishes. This is a biological setup that forces you into a cycle of overreaction and burnout because your brain doesn't know how to process emotions that are constantly being ignored. Let me paint a picture for you. It's 2 a.m. and you're lying in bed staring at the ceiling. You've just had another argument with someone close to you, maybe a friend, a partner, or even a family member. You told yourself you weren't going to let it bother you. You convinced yourself that you're fine, that you can move on. But in the back of your mind, you feel something shift. The problem is you don't know how to name it, and you definitely don't know how to express it. So you push it away again. Maybe you scroll through your phone for hours, or force yourself to sleep. But deep down, you know you're not fine. You're just not feeling anything. That's emotional suppression at work, and it's slowly becoming your new normal. But here's the twist. The more you push those emotions away, the more difficult it becomes to identify what you're really feeling. You might think you're protecting yourself, but you're actually distancing yourself from your own emotional truth. This is why you might find yourself stuck in unhealthy cycles, whether it's avoiding tough conversations, repeating past mistakes in relationships, or feeling disconnected from yourself. What you don't realize is that it's the emotions you're not allowing yourself to feel that are driving all of this. The feelings you avoid now will only show up in more destructive ways later. And this is where it gets tricky. You might think the solution is simply to feel more, to be more vulnerable, to let those feelings come to the surface. And for some people, that's the answer. But there's a catch. Let me give you a quick spoiler. The real issue isn't about feeling more. It's about understanding and processing what you're feeling in a way that doesn't overwhelm you. This is where most people go wrong. Point 1. Emotional suppression and the emotional numbness trap. You've probably experienced it, that sense of being disconnected from everything. This is what happens when you push down your emotions for too long. Your brain shuts down your ability to feel the highs and lows. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter responsible for pleasure and reward, decreases over time when emotions aren't processed. This creates a kind of emotional flatlining. Things don't excite you anymore, and you don't feel pain in the way you used to. But here's the kicker. This numbness isn't freedom. It's a silent, invisible cost. You stop feeling joy, but you also stop feeling connected to your own sense of purpose. Your mind becomes stuck in a loop of emotional avoidance, which means you can't move forward. You're just stuck. What does this look like in real life? Maybe you used to enjoy socializing with friends, but now it feels like a chore. You don't feel anything when you're around others. No joy, no frustration, just an empty space. You might have told yourself this is just part of growing up or getting over things, but the reality is that this is what happens when your emotional system is shut off for too long. It's not a phase. It's a pattern that's holding you back from real connection, and it's based in biology. Point 2, the danger of emotional rebound. What happens when you overcorrect? At first, you may feel like pushing your feelings aside is making you stronger. You're in control, you tell yourself. But the longer you keep your emotions bottled up, the more likely they are to explode, not in a healthy release, but in a sudden emotional rebound. This often shows up in ways you don't expect, like snap reactions, panic attacks, or unexpected outbursts. This happens because the amygdala, your brain's emotional processing center, gets overloaded when you suppress emotions for too long. It doesn't know what to do with all that repressed energy, so it releases it in the form of stress or anxiety. That's why you might find yourself crying over something small or getting upset by a harmless comment. The emotional bottleneck has built up, and now it has to escape in an uncontrolled way. This is where the reframe comes in. While it feels like a personal failure, it's actually a biological consequence of your brain trying to protect you from the pain you've been avoiding. The solution isn't to push harder, to avoid more, it's to learn how to process those feelings in a safe, healthy way. Emotional release doesn't have to be dramatic or explosive. It can be gradual, gentle, and part of your natural rhythm. Point 3. The hidden cost of avoidance in relationships. If you've been ignoring your emotions for too long, chances are you're feeling the effects in your relationships. Maybe it's in the form of emotional distance from your partner or friends, or maybe it's a series of small, unresolved arguments that seem to keep happening. When you're not connected to your own emotions, it's impossible to connect with others in an authentic way. This is because empathy, the ability to feel what others feel, starts with being in tune with your own emotions. If you're not processing what you feel, it becomes incredibly hard to understand what someone else is going through. Here's the truth. Emotional avoidance doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone around you. It makes you less available to the people who matter most. It's not about being too sensitive or too emotional. It's about being human. You're wired for connection. And when you deny your emotions, you deny yourself that connection. Now, let's break in for a second. I know what you're thinking. And that's all well and good, but what can I actually do about it? Stick with me. We're going deeper now. The biggest shift you can make is not in changing your emotions. It's in changing your relationship to them. This is where real progress starts. The final point, emotional processing and the permission to feel. This is the breakthrough moment. Learning to sit with your emotions and allow yourself to feel them, without judgment, without rushing to fix them. Research by Dr. David Cresswell at Carnegie Mellon University shows that people who practice emotional processing, meaning they allow themselves to fully experience and label their emotions, experience lower levels of stress and have improved mental health outcomes. The key is in giving yourself permission to feel whatever comes up, without guilt. When you do this, you take back control of your emotional world. You stop avoiding, you stop suppressing, and you start thriving again. And here's where it gets emotional. You've been carrying around all these feelings, thinking you needed to hide them, thinking they were something wrong with you. But I want to tell you, you're not broken. You're not defective. You're human. The brain chemistry is doing what it does when you push feelings away. But you can change that pattern. It's a simple shift, but it's a profound one. You don't need to fix your emotions. You just need to let them be. So here's the final step. Stop carrying that emotional weight in silence. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be strong. You just need to be human. If you don't start this journey, you'll miss out on the true depth of connection that comes from understanding yourself. And that's the secret to meaningful relationships, true fulfillment, and real peace. You can start by giving yourself permission to feel, without shame. That's the next step.